By the 1890s, Chicago had become something unprecedented, a city built around slaughter. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic photographs to life, allowing us to move through Chicago as it appeared in the 1890s. What you're about to see is a city that industrialized death, and in doing so, invented the modern world. This is Chicago in 1865, population 300,000, a trading post along Lake Michigan. Rail lines were beginning to converge. Land was cheap. The Great Fire had not yet occurred. The city was unremarkable. Then came the stockyards. The Union Stockyards opened on Christmas Day, 1865. They occupied 320 acres on the south side. 9 railroad companies had purchased the land together. This was not accidental. Chicago sat at the center of America's rail network. Within 25 years, the city's population would exceed 1 million. The stockyards were the reason. This is the heart of it. The Union Stockyards. By 1890, occupied over 1 square mile. The soaked unpossession. On peak days, over 75,000 animals arrived by rail. Cattle, hogs, sheep. They came from across the western states. An animal entered alive. 8 minutes later, it exited as packaged meat. The process was continuous. The kill floor operated in sequence. Each worker performed one task. One man stunned, another bled, another skinned. The line moved without stopping. Workers stood in fixed positions for 10-hour shifts. The floor was slick. Blood and fat coated everything. Falls were common. Injuries were frequent. Workers who could not keep pace were dismissed. By 1890, the stockyards processed over 9 million animals per year. This was not hidden. Visitors came to watch. The industry published tours. This was how the system functioned. Henry Ford visited these plants in 1906. He adapted their methods for automobile production. Chicago invented the assembly line before Detroit. It just assembled in reverse. It disassembled. This is the atmosphere around the stockyards, and it was inescapable. Visitors described the smell first: blood, rendering fat, burning hair, coal smoke from locomotives. The smell carried for miles. On certain days, it reached downtown, 6 miles north. There was a creek, Bubbly Creek. It received waste from the slaughterhouses, animal parts, blood, entrails. The water bubbled from decomposition gases. The methane was so thick that the surface appeared to boil. The creek was so viscous that chickens could walk across it. This was documented in city health reports. The water never froze in winter. The decomposition generated heat. The smoke was constant, rendering plants operated day and night. The air was thick with particulates. Soot covered buildings throughout the south side. Laundry hung outside turned gray within hours. This was the baseline. Not an accident, not a crisis. This was normal operation. This shows Packingtown, where the workers lived. The district bordered the stockyards directly. Housing was built quickly. Wooden tenements closely packed. Families lived in 2 rooms. Sometimes 3 families shared one privy. Water came from pumps in shared courtyards. The population was heavily immigrant: Polish, Lithuanian, and others from across Europe. By 1900, over 60% were foreign-born. Many spoke no English. The stockyards did not require it. Children worked. Boys as young as 10 entered the yards. They carried buckets, cleaned floors, assisted butchers. School attendance was irregular. State law existed, but enforcement was minimal. Wages were low. Skilled butchers earned $15 per week. Unskilled laborers earned 9. Women in the canning plants earned 6. Rent consumed half of earnings. Disease spread easily. Typhoid, tuberculosis, dysentery. Death rates in Packingtown were double the city average. Average life expectancy was 26 years. Infant mortality exceeded 200 per 1,000 births. Workers were dismissed if injured. No compensation system existed. A man who lost a hand lost his job. This was standard practice across the industry. This was documented. Settlement house workers filed reports. Photographs exist. Upton Sinclair would write about it in 1906. But in the 1890s, it was simply how the city functioned. This is Chicago's infrastructure, and it reveals how the city functioned as a node in a national system. By 1890, Chicago was the largest rail hub in America. More rail lines converged here than anywhere else. Cattle from Texas took 10 days to reach the city. The animals lost weight during transport. The railroads charged by weight. This was intentional. The stockyards did not raise animals. They received, processed, distributed. The yards held pens for 75,000 cattle, 125,000 hogs, 22,000 sheep. Animals arrived constantly. The city did not consume what it produced. Packaged meat, left by refrigerated railcar to eastern cities. By 1890, Chicago supplied most of the nation's dressed meat. This represented a shift. Before Chicago, animals were shipped live. Eastern slaughterhouses processed them locally. Chicago reversed this. Processing moved west. Distance from consumer no longer mattered. Wealth came from controlling the flow. The Big Four meat packers dominated the industry. They fixed prices. They controlled distribution. They determined what farmers would receive for livestock. But the system was brittle. When strikes occurred, the national meat supply halted. The Pullman strike of 1894 involved federal troops. President Cleveland sent the army to Chicago. The trains had to move. This is the contrast that defined Chicago in the 1890s. In 1893, the city hosted the World's Columbian Exposition. Over 27 million people visited the hotel. They came to see the White City. Buildings of plaster and staff, painted white, electric lights illuminated the grounds at night. It was called the most beautiful place on earth. The fairgrounds were 6 miles from the stockyards. The fair celebrated progress, technology, industry, culture. Frederick Jackson Turner declared the frontier closed. The Ferris wheel carried passengers 264 feet into the air. Electricity was everywhere, but on certain days, visitors at the fair could smell Packingtown. The wind carried it. The smell of blood and rendering fat mixed with the scent of flowers and popcorn. Both were Chicago. Both were real. The fair lasted 6 months. Then it closed. Most buildings were demolished. The White City vanished. Packingtown continued. Buffalo Bill's Wild West show played outside the fair. It showed what America had been. Inside the fair, the exhibits showed what America was becoming. Efficient, industrial, controlled. The stockyards represented that future more honestly than the White City. The fair was temporary architecture. The yards were permanent infrastructure. This is Chicago's influence, and it spread rapidly. Kansas City opened a stockyard in 1871. Omaha followed in 1883. Others copied the model across America. Each followed the same pattern: rail convergence, centralized processing, distribution by refrigerated car. The assembly line method spread beyond meat. Ford's Highland Park plant in 1913 applied Chicago's principles to automobiles. Break the process into steps. Fix each worker in position. Move the product past them. The problems spread too. Poor housing near factories, industrial pollution, immigrant labor exploitation, low wages, high mortality. Other cities inherited the same tensions. Labor organizing spread from Chicago. The American Federation of Labor was founded here in 1886. The Pullman strike began here. The 8-hour workday movement started here. Violence was common. The Haymarket Affair killed 11. Chicago was not unique. It was a blueprint, the model for industrial cities, the template copied across America and Europe. Efficiency through specialization, scale through infrastructure, profit through control. By 1900, Chicago was the second largest city in America. Only New York was bigger. But Chicago had grown faster, from 300,000 in 1870 to 1.7 million in 1900. The stockyards made this possible. This is Chicago in the 1890s. Smoke from the stockyards, trains arriving every hour, workers leaving at shift change, the smell that carried 6 miles, Bubbly Creek that never froze. The modern industrial system did not arrive gradually. It announced itself here, in the speed of the kill floor, in the volume of animals processed, in a city that made death efficient. The White City represented one vision of progress: clean, bright, temporary. The stockyards represented another: bloody, profitable, permanent. Both were Chicago. If there's another city or moment in history you'd like to see brought back to life, let me know in the comments.